BF5 co-op. What went wrong here? What happened? Those are the questions I'm going to pose in today's video. First up, let me read you something. I've collated a couple of quotes from press and video interviews at BF5 pre-launch events. Check this out. You go in behind enemy lines, preferably undetected, but I guess it's up to you. Players work together to push forward towards a series of objectives. The final goal of each Combined Arms mission will be extremely difficult to achieve, but if players are unable to reach their goal, they'll still need to get out alive. So each mission will give players the option to extract. The choice is yours, but think fast or you might all get wiped and lose it all. This experience is really what we want friends to have together, and in that, we've got a new system called the Mission Generator. It creates dynamic objectives and narratives in order to constantly keep the cooperative experience feeling fresh and challenging. Now I think that sounds pretty cool. There's a bit of depth there, and it sounds like players will have a choice in what they do, either extract or risk it all and continue. What does that mean? Sounds interesting though. What about this mission generator too? Now that really does sound compelling. Does that mean that each mission is going to be different because of some kind of a dynamic system? Sounds epic. I'd love to try that with my friends in a Battlefield game. The problem is, and it's a big one, that this is absolutely not what we've been given in Combined Arms, the BF5 co-op. The question is, why, and what can EA and DICE learn from this? So recently Combined Arms was launched in the game, and personally I don't think it really adds anything of value to the BF5 experience. You can jump in with up to 3 friends and play through 4 different missions spread across cut down versions of the multiplayer maps. These missions may involve taking out some generals or destroying artillery guns. The problem is that these missions are incredibly basic. Kill 20 generic enemies in an area is one of the missions, and then after that you can extract by waiting in a spot for a few minutes as endless waves of terrible AI run towards you and the mission is over. It's not very exciting or rewarding. In my opinion, the only reason I can see for doing these Combined Arms missions is that each difficulty level rewards you with company coins. So if you're in the market for a new cosmetic, then playing Combined Arms could offer you some opportunity. It's also a good way to learn some of the maps and the basics of the game because you can jump in as any class and use any weapon. Also, quick tip, you can actually do some of your weapon assignments in co-op too, providing they aren't ones that require actions on objectives, because co-op has no objectives that you can work towards them. 20 kills while prone, 20 kills while crouching, get those done in co-op if you fancy it easy. Now let's just go back to how this was originally pitched and described. You go in behind enemy lines, preferably undetected. Now to be fair, you can do some of the current co-op missions by playing a bit more stealthy. But Battlefield is not a stealth game, and even doing stealth missions in the war stories is terrible. It just feels clunky more than anything, but at least that element is in there in some regard. It was said that the final goal of each Combined Arms mission will be extremely difficult to achieve, and I suppose this is very dependent on individual player skill, but I don't personally think they're difficult at all. Even on the hardest mode, I didn't feel that we needed to pick a certain class, or we couldn't survive, or we needed a team composition, or that we even really had to think or plan anything that we were doing all that much. There were a couple of missions that I'll admit were harder than others. If you weren't paying attention, you would lose, but for the most part, I don't think they're very challenging at all. And then this, if players are unable to reach their goal, they'll still need to get out alive, so each mission will give players the option to extract. The choice is yours, but think fast or you might all get wiped and you lose it all. Well, this brings up 2 interesting points, because in the current Combined Arms, there's no option to extract early. In fact, there are no options like that at all. In every one of these missions, there's a base objective such as assassinating generals, destroying guns, and then you go to an extraction zone, hold on for a few minutes and the mission ends. There are no other possibilities, and certainly no option to extract early, but why would you even need to when there's only one objective to accomplish and nothing to lose? Players may want to extract in case your team gets wiped and loses it all. What does that mean exactly? Was there some system they had in place or in mind where the longer you survived, the more points you accrue or something? Was it XP? Company coin? Something along those lines perhaps? Maybe you had to do multiple objectives and pick your time when you think you can't survive any longer and then extract. Of course, that's absolutely nothing like what we ended up with. The biggest kicker here though is a mission generator that was mentioned. Dynamic objectives and narratives in order to constantly keep the co-op experience fresh and challenging. What on earth has happened to that mission generator. I love the sound of it though, being honest with you. You head into a co-op game and every time it creates a new story with new objectives that are different each and every time. Different vehicles, different enemy placement and special types, different spawn locations, maybe even different map routes. That would be epic. I'd love that. Sadly, again, that system nowhere to be seen. And what we actually ended up with was the single player AI on multiplayer maps that we'd already played on for nearly 4 months. There's nothing fresh here at all. Even the narratives for co-op are incredibly basic. There's a small cutscene at the beginning, which is actually duplicated at times across other missions. And to be honest, it's more of a collection of small animations than an actual cutscene or a story. It's also buggy, blurry, there's no ambient noise. It's just weird. There isn't really an engaging story here at all. What happened to all of those marching soldiers? People being mowed down with a Tommy gun like in the video teasers that were released. They're just not here. So what happened? If DICE were openly talking about this in interviews and videos before launch, that means that this was absolutely the plan for co-op. In fact, during the live reveal of the game, paratroopers, going in behind enemy lines, resource scarcity, the need to find tools and find your objectives were all mentioned. Players would need to assess if they could push through or extract. And this says, at least to me, that this was still what co-op was going to be when the game was revealed early in 2018. At some point after that though, maybe before the game was released or after, the co-op experience was heavily changed and devolved into what we've got now. But why? Is it possible that DICE maybe thought that they couldn't finish whatever they'd intended for co-op, and as a result this is the version of co-op that we got because they couldn't deliver on the experience that they promised? Was it time? Was it resources? Was it because the game launched in a bad state and didn't sell as well? Was it because of the delay and they needed to take people away from certain things? Was it something entirely different and they maybe just weren't happy with the direction Combined Arms was going in? We simply can't be sure. But what we do know, or at least what we can assume without playing the previous version of this, is that the idea that DICE had for Combined Arms was way more interesting and exciting than the version we actually got, and it leads me to ask this one question. Was it really worth releasing what we got at all? I know that sounds harsh, but it's not meant to be. I'm just trying to ask a question here. DICE and their team have put their heart and soul into developing game modes, maps, weapons. That being said, I don't think that Combined Arms in this form that we received adds anything to the experience, and perhaps it would have been better when they realised that they couldn't deliver on their vision that they talked about to just admit and stop for a second and say, hey, hold on, we're really sorry, but we can't nail our vision for co-op that we told you about. So for now, we're going to focus on putting everything we can into multiplayer, or perhaps release just one co-op level or experience which is much more similar to what they were originally describing. I think those would have been better choices, but with investors and other factors, I understand that that's not as simple as it sounds. As a publicly traded company, announcing features for a game and then not delivering on them can have a huge impact. Ultimately, releasing something like Combined Arms that is so underwhelming and nothing like what you promised, it causes long-term damage to the franchise and the reputation of DICE. That's the way that I see this. I just think that you're better either going all in with something and making it a really great experience that people will put time into or value, or stop for a second, change things around and put your time and resources somewhere else, just focus on multiplayer for example. If DICE were able to make a really compelling narrative co-op where you've got teammates that need to do certain jobs, like 2 guys who've got to hold off an airfield and then 2 teammates are in a plane, one flying, one on the gun, and you're all doing separate jobs to complete an objective, that would or could be amazing. Having the custom objectives like they described, with risk and reward and extraction and different things going on, that would have been good too. What we ended up with though just seems like something that was scrambled together at the last minute because the vision couldn't be achieved for whatever reason. The funny thing is, I think if you called Combined Arms the practice range, people wouldn't bat an eyelid at it and quite enjoy it. In its current state, Combined Arms is a way better practice mode than the practice range will ever be. You can explore some of the multiplayer maps with your friends, spawn in with whatever gear you like and shoot at actual moving infantry targets as well as land and air vehicles. At the same time, completing objectives like blowing stuff up. It's a simulation of multiplayer, which is what a practice range should be. That would be fine. Imagine if what we have in Combined Arms now had launched in November and been called practice mode. Brilliant. People would have loved that, another way for new players to learn the game and experience some of the maps. But when you talk about certain features in pre-launch marketing and events and then you deliver something that is so far away from that, there's always going to be questions asked and pushback from the community. And it all could have been avoided by just taking a step back and thinking, is launching this actually a good idea, and can we do things differently? And I think that this is also one of the reasons why DICE and EA are reluctant to talk about certain things that players are always wanting information on, RSP, esports for example, or whatever it might be. If they say one or two things that it's coming, or even just suggest it is, then they will be held to those standards going forward. So I understand why they're careful to not overtalk certain things. The problem here is that DICE promised an interesting co-op experience and talked about elaborate things, even suggesting that they'd created a mission generator, and then it's nowhere to be seen without any explanation as to what happened to it. I think therefore it's reasonable to wonder, especially when people bought the game with that context and promise in their minds, oh it's cool, I'll pay $60 but they'll add a co-op mode for free and this is what it's going to be like. But it wasn't. Overall, Combined Arms was a huge disappointment for me. It promised so much but delivered on so little. It doesn't even have matchmaking. I wanted to love it, but the missions are so bland and uninspired, and it's really hard to love it when you know what DICE clearly wanted to deliver at some point and it ended up being so far away. Maybe one day we'll find out why. Either way, this kind of stuff is damaging, and I hope that the people in charge take a look at what happened here and change or adapt to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and could things have been done differently. Before we end, I wanted to briefly talk about something that I noticed in co-op. I was the host, playing with 3 friends, my game crashed, and because of that, my 3 friends disconnected from the mission as well. And that says to me that I'm hosting that session myself on my client and my internet. Maybe not, but that's how it seemed. Not only that, but I'm doing this on a Combined Arms map that's essentially a multiplayer map with the ability to pick a class and have 3 friends join. If that's the case, then what is stopping DICE from allowing players to create local sessions of maps with a few friends to run around on, search for things, test stuff, record stuff? Is that not a possibility? Because that says to me that it's possible right now. Of course, I don't know for sure how this system works, or even the practice range system where you can do a similar thing, but I really wonder why there isn't something in place there to just allow myself and some friends to run around in a sandbox on one of the multiplayer levels. It's an interesting idea that doesn't involve an RSP system, and it seems like the tech is there to do it in place, so why not just let us make a lobby with 3 friends and load any multiplayer map that we choose. And that's all for today, guys. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think of Combined Arms, how it turned out? Let me know. If you enjoyed this video, give me a like. If you didn't, a dislike, subscribe for more, hit that bell, and I'll see you in the next one.